up a dive. Feel the vibe, get ready to ignite. Untold stories in the airways, flying through the night. Experience voices, tales so bold. Streaming live, the truth unfolds. Untold Radio Network, where secrets come alive. New episodes daily, the mysteries thrive. Great guests, super chat, it's so I remember right. Share and subscribe, join the side where truth can't hide. Aliens in the attic, UFOs in the sky. Cryptids lurking, oh my, oh my. Ghosts in the hallway, whispering your name. The paranormal, the unexplained. Become a VIP, get the inside scoop. Unlock the mysteries, be part of the group. Live streaming stories, they're talking to you. Super chats buzzing, join the crew. Untold Radio Network, where secrets come alive. New episodes daily, the mysteries thrive. Great guests, super chat, it's a wild member ride. Share and subscribe, join the side where truth can hide. So if you've got the guts and you want to explore, tune into the Untold, it's what you're looking for. From aliens to ghosts and all that's unseen. Untold Radio Network, where the world's mysteries convene.
The paranormal, UFOs, monsters, mysteries. You're listening to Talking Weird. And now, from a cabin deep in the Northwoods, your host, Dr. Dean Bertram.
Greetings, all my fellow weirdos and weirdettes. Welcome to Talking Weird on the Untold Radio Network. I'm your host, Dean Bertram, and I'm so grateful that you've decided to join us for the next hour or so, whether you're watching live, where we go out on YouTube and X and Facebook every Thursday night at 9 p.m. Central, or maybe you're watching it archived on one of those pages, sites, socials after the fact, or maybe you're listening to us on one of the many podcast platforms that just not this show goes out on, but every other show on the Untold Radio Network, and they're all great. And I recommend, if you only listen to Talking Weird, check out some of the others as well. They're fantastic. You will not regret it. Anyway, I'm glad that you're here. As you can see, I'm rugged up here in the Northwoods. We are expecting increasingly colder temperatures. I think it's meant to get down to negative 45 sometime overnight or early in the morning, so I'm prepared. I'm actually kind of joking. I have a nice wood furnace here, which is raging away, so hopefully I won't need to be dressed like a lumberjack for the next 4 days. When I go outside, I have to be, though. But let me know how it is in your neck of the woods. Tell me, just drop it, in the comments. Is it cold? Probably you're anywhere in the northern part of the United States or Canada. It's probably just as freezing as it is here. I know tonight's guest is also in very cold climes. I'm so happy to have him here. I've wanted to talk to him for quite some time. He's a fascinating human being. But quickly, before I was about to jump in, but I had something to share with you, and we'll get back to our guest in a minute. For those of you who follow my filmmaking and know I'm always talking about The Man Who Invented Flying Saucers, the feature film documentary now that I've been making for a number of years, although I was getting close to being finished. Or perhaps you've heard me talk about The Shaver Mystery, which is kind of a standalone segment from that feature about Richard Shaver and about Ray Palmer, and how all of this kind of led into modern day UFO belief, and a scandalous sci-fi series of stories that have all but been forgotten now. But in the 1940s in America, everybody knew what the Shaver mystery was. It was very much the proto-UFO mystery of its time. Anyway, I've got a couple of screenings that I can talk about coming up, which maybe some of you will be able to get to if you're in are the right part of the world, and one is at the Great Beyond Film Festival, which is in Great Falls, Montana. That takes place from February 5 to 7. It looks absolutely fantastic. So if maybe you're anywhere near Montana, you can go and check out the Shaver Mystery and a bunch of other incredible films there. The next confirmed screening, we've been screening now for almost 2 years. We've had dozens of screenings, but we are getting kind of close, probably, to the end of the festival run of this movie. And that screening is at Contact Modalities Expo in Wisconsin, in the town of Delavan, and that's May 1st to 3rd. I'll also be there. I'll be presenting not only the screening, but I will also be talking about the Shaver Mystery afterwards, about what I like to call the Shaver Mystery Part 2, because it continued for many years after the official mystery disappeared from the pages of the famous science fiction magazine Amazing Stories that it ran in. I believe you can also get discounted tickets by using my name. That's my first name, Dean, Dean. You can probably maybe even scan that on your screen. I put up somewhere to hit it now. Or failing that, you can probably just go and look for Contact Modalities Expo online and just go and get your tickets from there. At any rate, thank you for bearing with me while I did a little blurb about the film. Now back to our guest, which is far more important. He's a dedicated investigator, committed to exploring the enigmas of the North American wilderness. For over 9 years, he's been immersed in the complex and fascinating world of Sasquatch and other cryptids. His journey is driven by a deep commitment to uncovering the truth and shedding light on the often overlooked realm of extraordinary phenomena, from cryptids all the way through the paranormal. So he looks at everything, including UFOs. And he believes that reaching true understanding of Sasquatch requires patience and a genuine passion for the search, emphasizing that financial motivations are counterproductive. He acknowledges that these creatures are deeply connected to nature and operate entirely on their own terms. He's also a filmmaker, which maybe we'll talk a little bit about that tonight. And he's embarking on a very ambitious new project to create travel documentaries, explore a broad spectrum of these type of subjects and, anomalous phenomena, ranging from Sasquatch to the Slender Man. So I'm absolutely delighted to welcome to Talking Weird tonight, Chris Reinhardt.
Hello, everybody. Hello, Dr. Dean. Thanks for having me.
Man, it's so good to have you on the show. I'm looking so forward to this chat because, my goodness, have you had some experiences? Have you been neck deep in this stuff for a long time? And there's probably too many to even talk about tonight. To start with, you're one of the shows I tell people they should also watch on the Untold Radio Network, and that's Real American Monsters. When does that show go? When does that show go live?
We are on Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern.
People should check that out.
Yeah, we are on every 2 weeks, and then 1 week I got to take off because I'm on call for work. So I go 2 weeks on, 1 week off. So, yeah, stop on by. I love your show, too. I tell everybody, too, about your show. And I got a couple people I told about it tonight. They're here tonight and already in the chat room. So I'm a big fan. And like I tell people about this show is that you learn a lot on this show. It's I don't know how to describe it. It's educational. You make it educational and fun to listen to, and it's not like reading a book and you learn a lot, and it's fun, and it's a great show. So I'm really happy to be here. So thank you.
Well, you know what, I love that your experiences, and correct me if I'm wrong, but they've kind of, as you've gone through what you've gone through, you've kind of changed the way that you've looked at the Bigfoot phenomena. Maybe I'll give you the floor for a while and you can tell people a little bit about that background about yourself and some of these experiences in your journey through this.
Okay. So when I first started this, I really thought that I could, how hard was it to get a picture of these guys in the forest? What are the people doing around? I didn't know anything about Bigfoot. I didn't even know there was conferences for like 3 years. I knew nothing about any of it. I didn't know there was a Bigfoot community. I didn't know anything about it. I knew I was watching YouTube, and that's when I started my journey with this. So I never even had an interaction until later I found out that I might have had one when I was younger. But as I grew along with the Bigfoot, you have to go with where the evidence brings you, and the evidence has brought me from thinking that it was easy to get a picture of these guys and think they were just a big monkey in the woods that you could find, to now realizing how difficult it really is to try to even consider even trying getting them on film or recordings or in all that, and then to experience all the other stuff that's gone along with the paranormal side of it and the UFO side of it. And I've had witnesses to most of it, almost probably 90% of it. I've had a couple experiences by myself, but mostly along the way I've had folks with me, and they've got to experience it. So it took me 11 years. I finally captured some like real solid. I mean, I've caught, I traded with these guys for 6 years at a place called Larry's. Well, recently in August, I captured vocals that are like unreal, and they've been vetted, and it's not a known animal, and it's not in the human range of voice or anything like that. And the good doctor here, he's heard them. And there's 3 individuals. David Ellis, he uses this new program called Spectral Layers, and he plucked all the 3 individuals out, and it's pretty amazing stuff. So that took 11, almost 11 years to capture that. And so I started off thinking they were a monkey that was in the woods that could hide very well, to now thinking that they're an interdimensional being that can travel back and forth. And again, this is just my opinion, and I'm not the Bigfoot guru. I'm just gonna, I just go basically on my evidence, and that's how I progressed over the time I've done it.
Well, I think none of us are experts. There's a lot of people in the field who pretend that they are, and they like to, have some argument to authority that, they know this and they know that. But the reality is we're all kind of fishing in the dark here, trying to find out, what the answers are. And some of us are more field orientated. You've had all kinds of experiences, and some of us, like me, probably sit around and academically, twiddle our thumbs and try to come up with ideas. But I'm much closer to your interpretation as well. Anybody who watches regularly, and I'm sure you're aware of too, Chris, is I tend to think that a lot of what seem to be disparate, anomalous experiences, anomalous phenomena, whether it's UFOs or Bigfoot or any other kind of cryptids or fairies, or so many of these things, I think are probably manifestations from a similar, perhaps even the same root source. And I think therein might lay the real value for those of us who are interested in it, that perhaps the study of these things might get us somehow closer to a realization of our own reality. Forget about the reality of Bigfoot or the reality of UFOs or the reality of fairies or the reality of, and I don't say fairies dismissively. I know some people throw fairies into the mix because they think it's silly. I think fairy faith in Ireland has a lot of clues to the nature of what these things are. So I take fairy faith very seriously. But my point is, I think perhaps they have more to tell us about our existence than we're ever going to learn about their existence.
Right. No, I agree with you 100%. Yeah, that makes total sense. Just like when I was telling you prior to the show that me and my wife, we witnessed 2 UFOs, right? The last one that we witnessed was 100 foot above our building that I live at. And it was the size of a football field. And this thing just appeared over just came out, and she came out of the house, and I'm pointing up. I'm like, look at that, Maria. And she turned around, she looks up, and she goes, oh my God, what is that? And this thing is it's not making a noise, and it's just going along, right? And then it banks like that, and we see the top of it, and it's all triangle patterns and everything. And I'm getting to your what you just talked about. At the end of this, it'll make sense. And then it turned, and she goes, let's get in the car and let's chase this thing. So we got in the car, and we're chasing it, and we're going up it goes up this hill that's near my house. And then when it banks again, and then it gets to the woods, and it hits the wood line, and poof, it disappears.
Wow.
So what kind of reality is that? That's just something. And then she goes to me, she goes, you know what? It was like 6:10 in the afternoon, or 6:10 early evening. And there's people out. I take care of a building complex in Connecticut, and there's people taking groceries out of their vans and bringing them in the house. And there's all these people out there. Not one of them looked at us. Not one of them engaged in what we were going. We were done that. We were pointing. Look at that. Look at that. And she goes, you know what? Not one of them people ever turned around and looked at us. So, the whole reality, like you said, are we part of their reality, or we're just catching glimpses of that, or are they catching glimpses of our reality, or is it vice versa? Just like you were talking about. So it's very interesting. It's probably 100% right.
I mean, I think it's a working hypothesis, if it's nothing else, and I'm fascinated that you went from somebody with a very physical interpretation or explanation or expectation of what Sasquatches and the like were, and you came through experience to the position you're in now, which is a fairly unique story.
Right. I never in a million year would have put the paranormal in with the Sasquatch until it happened. And then it started happening, and it started happening on a regular basis. And we were catching EVPs, and we were all this weird stuff. And when we were in the green swamp in Florida, we had something mess with our phones. I had a brand new phone in the Florida swamp, and my buddy's phone was going crazy. We're at this place he calls Knox Creek, Chris Connor from the Trail to Bigfoot. And, they're rifling through his phone. Something's rifling through his phone, trying to get into his work and trying to get into all his stuff, his credit cards, this and that. And I just had a brand new phone. And he goes, "What's up with your phone?" And nobody has my number but my wife and two other. Chris had it, and another guy, Tim, down in Florida, had it at the time. And I go, "Oh, there's nothing on my phone, but there's a text message, and it had 4 initials on it. It had MBBC over and over and over again for like 31 lines." And I'm like, okay, it's in my pocket, so it's, butt dial, blah, blah, blah. So we erased everything but 11 lines. And I'm trying to rush through all these because I want to try and get to, everything. But I just want to tell you about how the paranormal got into this. We got back to his house that night after erasing. We took a picture of the 11 lines. We got back. I got out of the shower. I go to check and, see if Maria got a hold of me. I look down at my phone. And all the 4 initials are back. Now they're capital letters. There's a parentheses. There's explanation points. And it was just sitting on the counter. I go out and I said, "Chris, look at this." He's like, "Oh, my God." He's like, "What do you think that is? Are we picking up some kind of weird Morse code, this and that?" We couldn't figure it out. He calls his wife over, Beata. He goes, "Beata, what do you think this is?" She goes, "I know exactly what that is. Mark, Betty, Beata, and Chris, the first 4 initials of the 4 people that have been in the green swamp for the last 10 years looking for the Bigfoot."
Gosh.
As a text message of me typing out that I never typed. And that's when it just went poof. And everything changed after that. I brought something back. I had to have my house blessed from Florida. The 3 of us stole him, Chris, his sister, and me. When we were in the green swamp, we walked over something. We had the same things go on at our houses at the same time. So that's when that all turned for me. And ever since then, it's just been really, really, crazy cool stuff. It's pretty neat. But, when my grandchildren were living, they were starting to see monsters in the house, in the corners of the house. And then I woke up, I had 3 scratches on my inner arm. And Alice Santariga, who's in the audience, told me, he goes, "You got to have your house checked and house blessed." So he had set up a priest for me to come over. And after that day, there was no more monsters in the house. So it's all, you got to be careful out there too, because you never know what you're going to come across.
What kind of precautions do you take now, having had that experience?
Oh, I got holy water. I bring St. Michael pendants with me. I sage my stuff when I come home. All that, and I walk out of the forest. If anything's with me, you're not allowed to come with me. You must stay here, in the name of, the name of Jesus Christ, all that. So, yeah.
I think a lot of this, and it's interesting. You know what I found fascinating? This is on a slightly different topic, but excuse me, is that in the UFO realm, which is more my world than the cryptozoological world, right? is that for a long time, the type of things we're talking about, the spiritual or the connected nature of all phenomena, there were people who were real champions of it in ufology. John Keel's one, Jacques Vallée's one. There's a few other, even up to today, there's people like, Greg Bishop and Joshua Cutchin and other very cool thinkers today, David Metcalf. But the extraterrestrial hypothesis had been so culturally dominant for so long that the alternative way of looking at the UFO phenomenon, meaning that it was somehow not extraterrestrial, but whatever your term you prefer, interdimensional, spiritual, paranormal, whatever, that it was something far stranger, never really got any traction in the mainstream. But since there's been this new push for disclosure ever since the New York Times article in 2017, and the media started taking the UFO phenomenon seriously again, and we get congressional investigations, and it's on, it's everywhere from the New York Times to, Tucker Carlson and every media platform in between, is that all of these key players in the UFO disclosure realm, whether it's people like Tom DeLonge, who used to be, Blink-182 and Angels and Airwaves frontman, really famous pop singer, but he started to the Stars Academy. He started pushing the disclosure movement. People in to the Stars Academy, people like Hal Puthoff, who's been doing this kind of stuff for years. Leslie Kean herself, one of the co-authors of the famous 2017 New York Times piece, through to, I mentioned him before, through to Tucker Carlson, through the whistleblower David Grush, all of these, and including Congress people now. The media hasn't quite caught up, but all the main heavy hitters in the disclosure movement, and when I say that, I mean anybody who seems to be saying it's real and, there's more to now in the mainstream, the majority of these people are now saying this isn't extraterrestrial. This is interdimensional. They use different terms. Tucker Carlson talks about it being a spiritual evil. There's been congressional people who've said similar things. It seems to be that there's an acceleration in understanding that this thing is far weirder than the previous extraterrestrial interpretation has suggested. But I find it interesting that for Carlson, for example, and you both suggest that this thing could be a spiritual evil. And I'm very sympathetic to that as well, by the way. Do you think that's something which is caught on in the Bigfoot community and the real movers and shakers as much as it's catching on in the UFO community now?
I think in the Bigfoot community, there's a bigger bite in that end of it now. I think it's more accepted. I think it's coming to more light because there's equipment that you can measure this stuff with now. There's equipment you can use in the field to get these readings. There's equipment you can use to say, get the 40 hertz hums. These are things that nobody ever looked into before. They always thought it was a monkey for all these years. And if you tried to think outside the box, you were put up against the whipping post, and you were done. They would cast stones, whip you down, and you'd have no credibility ever again. Now there's too many of the folks out there that are into this and are like Barb Shoop. Look, she caught that one, whatever, that little one's all cloaked out in a mirror, and that's incredible footage. And the camera she used, there's no way she could have hoaxed that. And there's just all these folks coming forward with all this other stuff now, and I think there's a chunk of it, not like the UFO though, but the UFO is really, it's probably more in the, I don't know how the UFO there's a community, I don't know too much about all that, but people aren't paying attention. Mainstream is not paying attention. They came out in Congress and told folks, listen, these guys are real. They're interdimensional travel. They're traveling. Our bodies can't take it. Their bodies can, and they walk among us. Hello, people. What's going on? You gotta. How much more do you need? They're telling you that they're real, and why won't they do that with the Sasquatch? That's the other point. There's so many folks that have seen them and experienced them. I just don't think they're the hide and seek champions of the world. I just think they can come and go. I think they have radioactive parts to them. I think that white Alba Verdex that they're leaving, I think that's radioactive. I think that's like a coating they use before when they come back and forth. Again, this is just me. This is just my thoughts. I'm not telling you that this is real 100%.
I'm totally sympathetic with it. What fascinates me and I think this should fascinate anybody, is that so many of these things do leave physical trace evidence, be it Bigfoot or UFOs or even spectral hauntings, you know what I mean? Like, name it. But they're elusive. Do you know what I mean? And it isn't that Bigfoot, as you said, he's not the world's champion, of hide and seek. Because the reality is there's so many Bigfoot stories where people shot at these things and nothing happened. Because my big question is, if Bigfoot's real, and I think he's real. Let me rephrase that. If Bigfoot is flesh and blood and is nothing more than a relict hominid or an undiscovered North American great ape or something, right? There would be a body now, not necessarily even just found dead in the woods. I mean, a body in that we live in a country, God bless the Second Amendment, where there are more guns than people, and there are, even here in Wisconsin, in our opening season gun weekend, I think the amount of hunters in the woods is bigger than the world's like 9th or 7th largest army or something in one state, right? There are so many people with guns in the woods, and it isn't that they don't shoot at them. If you read, as you're very aware of, the history of Sasquatch stories in this country, there is story after story of people saying they shot these things and nothing happened, or they swatted, the bullets like they were just flies bothering them, or they disappeared when they got shot, or they didn't even register. So there's been plenty of stories, as credible as stories which don't involve shooting Sasquatch, where people have shot these things and nothing's happened. So there's that weird conundrum that we know there seems to be physical, marks left by these creatures, but at the same time, there's no body, and meaning that people have shot them and there's no body. Because if there was a Bigfoot, there's a report down the road from me, and I live rurally, but it's still Wisconsin. I'm not in the Pacific Northwest. There's multiple reports around here, right? Somebody would have shot one here, and somebody would drag it to the steps of Fox News or CNN or whatever, or the local paper, and they dump the body out for their 15 minutes of fame. To think that that's never happened in the history of firearms in the United States of America is super naive. So there's something there, but to me, it almost seems like you can't really think that you can think these things are physical, like you suggest, and they come and go. Totally sympathetic to that. But I don't see how you could believe there's such a large population of Sasquatch that they're seen almost in every state in the union, and that an American hunter hasn't put, a bullet through one yet and dragged in the carcass with his buddies. It's just, that's just silly to me.
Or we have one in a zoo. We have zoos, and if there were in the forest in North America, we would have one in a zoo, and that's the way I look at it. It's just these guys are too smart. They like I said, they come and go. I think they come here to hunt and breed. That's what I think they come here for. I think wherever they are, they don't have the food source, or because most of the sightings you hear, they're running out in front of somebody, or someone's walking down the trail and boom, there's one, or someone's running across the corner of the field, or he's sitting in a tree stand and one's coming down, looking for food or a deer or whatever. Those are all the interactions that you hear all over the place, unless someone's habituating in an area that they live in. Then you'll hear a little bit more. But when these guys are caught, they're caught by accident. They're not caught on purpose, because they're way too smart, and they're way too smart to run out in front of cars. I just think when that spot opens and they come, wherever it comes, they're there, and they have to make the best out of it.
I wonder, because I find that interesting too, that these things, run in front of cars. It's interesting because when you read the early American Bigfoot books, and they're great books like by John Green and, Renata Hendon and Peter Byrne and those kind of people, they all kind of suggest these things are elusive and intentionally avoid man, But the reality is those early reports are, Bigfoot's looking in windows and Bigfoot's running across highways and Bigfoot's, disturbing campsites. It's like, they're not avoiding us. I often wonder, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, I often wonder if they intentionally, whatever they are, because I don't know, but if they don't intentionally present themselves to us for whatever reason, who knows?
All right. Well, I traded with them for 6 years, so what I believe to be Sasquatch. I mean, we found prints up there. They left us gifts. They were giving us it was a great story. I did it for 6 years. It was incredible stuff that happened at my place. It was called Larry's. There's a lot of folks that followed that know what I'm talking about. They would leave Larry feathers. It was at his home, and he had a wood burning stove like yourself, and he would go to work in his truck. But every morning when he'd go out to his favorite, where they would see him all the time, there would be a raven feather in front of the door of the wood burning stove. There'd be a raven feather at his car door. His wife seen two of them in the creek behind the house while she's doing dishes. And that's where I just caught those vocals that you have listened to, right up at that same property. So, why they were there, why they were trading with us, why they made themselves known to us. It took a long time to gain that trust. It just didn't happen overnight. We walked around in circles for months before it happened. But once it started happening, it didn't stop. And it was very, and they would present this, so they were following us. They would knock 10, 20 feet in back of us, let us know they were behind us.
Wow.
We would find these trees. We always did pattern hikes. It's a great, great story and the stuff that happened there. But yeah, I think that they were there, but I think they would come and go from there because they wouldn't be there all the time. Sometimes they would be gone for months. Like in the wintertime, they were never around.
Wow.
And I don't think it was the cold. I don't think it had anything to do with it. I just don't think that they're there. And it was quite the ride.
What do you, I know there's no way you know because nobody knows, although you've had far more experience than many people with this kind of stuff. What do you think is their purpose? Like, what do you think's their motivation to do, like trading with you and things like this?
I think they're interested in us. If they're here and they're living in the forest and they know they have each other, why not watch the guys that are in the forest? And then once you start seeing what they're doing, because that's what we were doing, we were looking for what they do and what they we did pattern hikes and what was different, what was moved, what was this. And then once we started noticing that, the game started. Then they started playing that game with us, and they would move sticks and balance trees and leave us rocks and take a crystal rock back and forth from the thing. At the end, Dean, we were burying our gifts in the ground, underground, with rocks on top of it in Tupperware containers and then dirt on top of it, and leaving a stone that was there since day one. And we would come back and everything would be off the top of the hole. The rocks would be moved. The Tupperware lid would be plucked and all the stuff inside would be gone. So that was, right at the end. That's what was going on while we were there.
And I don't have a whole lot of faith in trail cams or any technology to capture any of this stuff. But did you guys set cameras ever to try?
Yeah, we tried, but I have some footage. I don't have it loaded up, but they would lose sticks and they would wave sticks in front of the cameras to get them going. And I think they can see that IR, and I think it hurts their eyes. And I think that's why they avoid it. I don't think they know it's a camera. I just think the IR bothers their eyes, because I was in a place in Missouri, sitting on a ridge at 2:00 in the morning, watching one pace back and forth between two trees. And it was a FLIR camera on a stick, and we were watching the screen in front of us, like all huddled up, and it was pointing backwards. And this one was walking back and forth, and one guy turned around to get something out of his backpack, and that one, he jumped behind the tree and started peeking at us. And it was pitch dark, Dean, pitch black, and he was 60 yards up the hill. How did he see that far in the pitch black night? So that's what I think the IR, the issues with their eyes are so attuned to the night that IR light, they can see that a mile away, and if they'll avoid it because it'll blind them, and they won't know where, they won't be able to move. Deer in the headlights. The IR is Sasquatch's deer in the headlights, I believe. But again, I have no way to prove that.
No, I think it's as good a hypothesis as any. I always, my feelings are a little more, I suppose, esoteric and strange. I tend to look at the narrative value of a lot of these stories. And I mean that, and what does it do for our consciousness? What does it do for us as a spiritual species? And I think that the same way in old fairy lore and old fairy tales, people would go into fairyland and they'd get the fairy gold as proof, or an object as proof, and put it in their pocket. And when they come home, they would reach into their pocket and there'd be nothing there but dust or leaves or dung or something, right? I often wonder if whatever this phenomenon is, and when I say phenomenon, I mean all the phenomena, everything from Sasquatch to ghosts to UFOs to fairies to whatever else. I wonder if its purpose whatever its purpose is, part of its purpose for us isn't some kind of narrative value in that we never can solve this mystery, and we're not meant to solve this mystery. So there's never that final piece of proof where we can go, aha, Sasquatch is real, aha, there are really ghosts, aha, there are really, fairies or UFOs or anything. It seems to me so many people come so close through various methods of getting, the bite in this, but you can never catch it. It's like, fishing for, an eel with your hands in a barrel of Vaseline. You just come up, you kind of got it, and then it's gone as soon as your hands come out of the goo.
That's very interesting. I never thought about that way, but you are right. It's everybody. Yeah, everybody. I mean, there's been folks that have had great footage. The Patterson Gimlin footage is great footage. But you ever notice that all the best footage involves babies? Like the
Tell me a little bit about that. Interesting.
So obviously Patty's lactating, right? She has breasts. She that, and then there's here we go. Now I got to remember names, and I'm not good at that. But the other one, I don't know, the Independence Day one with the rocks. Everybody knows the one that she goes behind the rocks and cradles the one and runs it down the thing. That's great footage. Then I can't. You guys got to help me in the chat there with the name when he goes. Oh, there he goes. There. What's that? What's his name?
Someone might chime in. I can't help you because, again, it's
yeah,
not,
no,
I'm aware of some of the stuff.
My tongue. They just can't get a book about it. But Paul Freeman, I think it's Paul Freeman. Is that his name?
Yep.
Paul Freeman. Yeah, Paul Freeman.
Flat Rockland, aka Matt Auckland.
Right. So that film, after he goes, oh, there it goes. He goes down she goes down, or it's a he. I don't know if it's a she or he, but he goes down and he picks up a little one. He's got him on his shoulder. Another great footage, baby involved. I think that's the major thing with getting great footage. There's got to be a child involved, or else you're never going to get that great footage. Again, that's just my opinion.
That's fascinating.
So if you have a habituation area and there's babies there, and I think you got a really good shot of capturing them on camera, unless you have a really, like the Cells project. You ever hear of the Cells?
No, tell me about that.
There's a Texas farmhouse in the 90s. It was Mike and Sandy Sells, and the fence climber video comes out of it. They had like a clan of Sasquatch here, but they didn't call themselves the Sasquatch. They called themselves the Ancient Ones. And there was one, there was like hybrids there, and they interbred, and it's a huge story. That's one of the documentaries we're working on right now. But they caught great footage down there because I don't think they were like Sasquatch. I think they didn't really care if they were caught on film, but they were caught at distance, but they were caught, and they were filming into mirrors and capturing mirrors and stuff like that. I think there's different circumstances, but again, and then if you look at it this way, all the people that have the habituation areas and get close to these things, a lot of them, people get sick. Like Mike got cancer and died, and we had just talked to two investigators that were close to Mike when we were at the project. And he says these things, and Mike had a connection. He was connected to what was going on there, and then he ended up getting sick and passing away early. The guy from Robert Dotson, he got close. He got real close, and he's that famous one. He goes, "Oh, don't try this at home," and he charged him. He got sick and died of cancer. So I think the people that have them close by and are interacting with them, you should be very careful. Carry meters with you, RF meters, because we've had alarming RF readings when we've had stones thrown at us.
Gosh, that's fascinating.
And I'm bringing Geiger counters with us now because I think the radioactivity is a part of it. And I mean, we had a satellite technician reach out to us, and we have an EMF meter with RF on it, and he did research on the meter. He says whatever was throwing stones at you that day, he says, if you were in a Faraday box, you would have been cooked alive. He says that's such a broad band, you guys should not be experiencing that reading anywhere in the forest. unless you had a government drone sitting above you, beaming down on you, and we didn't. He says there's no way, no possible way that it was anything else, and there's no way you should have been experiencing those levels of radiation, gamma, in the forest. And we had 3 of them around us throwing stones at us at the same time.
I
And
think sorry, go.
No, and now it happened down in the Florida swamp with Chris Connor too, at the same time. So like 2 weeks prior. So,
Gosh, I think in what you're saying there lies some very important information, and it interconnects with what we were saying about similarities between these things. Because of course, in UFO lore, there's any number of stories about people getting sick from radiation or sick from burns, whether it's the Cash Landrum story, whether it's all kinds of tales of what's the guy's name? What's the guy's name who got the radiation burns on him? Gosh, it's a famous one. Anyway, there's stuff from Skinwalker Ranch of people getting, tumors and cancer and things. Like, it's an ongoing story, and certainly people like Jacques Vallée and John Keel in particular identified this is a problem. There's something, I mean, it suggests there's something very strange and powerful going on at some energy level, because no flesh and blood creature is going to be radiating the type of, gamma rays or radiation or whatever that's going to, put you in the hospital or, injure you.
right.
But maybe if this is some either coming from some energy source or coming through something which generates energy, or their very existence somehow, evokes these kind of fields. And again, this just convinces me even more that there's a commonality between so many of these things.
Yeah, no, I think it's all intertwined. I think it's all interlocked. I believe everything is the same. I think it's just what we're experiencing. I mean, you can go into the forest and look for aliens, and probably, whatever you're experiencing, you're thinking it's an alien. Without seeing it, you don't know what's throwing stones at you. Just like I said, we had 3 things throwing stones at us while using that 40 hertz frequency, like I told you prior, a hummingbird sounding frequency. We had 3 things come in and start throwing stones at us, and our RF meter started going off the wall. It topped out for 15 minutes, like beep. We even wrote to the company and asked, what does 1 dash 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 mean? And they wrote back, it means that meter doesn't go any higher. And they didn't even expect, to get that question. It's pretty incredible. And I just think that I don't know if that's when it opens up and everything shifts, or it's hard to explain, because people get sick, if they say it's infrasound that's hitting them in the stomach. What if it's radiation that you're getting sick from? What if there's burns? Like Jeremiah, Jeremiah from Bigfoot Society, he was up at a Bigfoot area, and he got burns on his on his legs, and he had to end up going to the hospital. And the doctor says, where did you get those radiation burns? He's like, radiation burns? I was in the forest. How did he get radiation burns on his thing? I mean, I don't know if I know it was radiation. That's what the doctor said, it was radiation burns. I don't know what the end the story is. I don't know how they would decipher if it was or not. But that's happening. You guys can. He was on my show. He talked about it. So, you got to be careful, because I think that once those doors open, I think those levels that's what I think it is. I think when those whatever opens and shifts, I think it all shifts, and you're caught in it because they're shifting in, and you're in their reality now, and we're not outside. Does that make any sense? You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, it makes sense.
So,
What I also found interesting then, and you're very switched on for thinking it, is when you talked about things throwing rocks at you, you said, well, they could have been aliens that were throwing rocks at us.
right.
And my good friend Joshua Cutchin, anybody who hasn't read Josh's work, they should read it for the entire paranormal spectrum. It's very insightful. He's one of the very best thinkers in this realm today. But he wrote a book with Timothy Renner called, it's a 2-part book. There's two books. It's called Where the Footprints End. And in that book, they note all these things which don't seem to relate to Bigfoot being a flesh and blood creature. And they look at many cultural parallels So they have Bigfoot doing things which were known of in fairy faith, for example. Like somebody with a Bigfoot problem on their ranch will, one morning they'll find something's come in and braided their horse's hair, and they think it's Bigfoot. But of course, that was something that the fairies used to do. And there's many examples like that. But one of the interesting things in that is they talk about how rock throwing, like people who are in the woods and get a rock thrown at them, who are conscious of Bigfoot lore, or particularly people who are out there looking for Bigfoot, they instantly assume that's a Bigfoot. In fact, so many supposed Bigfoot encounters are just things like rocks being thrown, or wood knocks, or hearing a howl, or a whoop or something. But they make the point in that book that rocks being thrown is a very well-known haunting or poltergeist phenomenon, like rocks being thrown at houses, rocks falling on the roofs of houses. So it almost seems to be that if you're in a house and you thought there was a ghost problem and there were rocks falling on your ceiling or something, then you would assume that was a poltergeist, or a ghost. But if you're out in the woods and you believe in Bigfoot and a rock gets thrown at you, assume it's a Sasquatch.
Yeah. No, you can't. That's what I've been telling you. You froze up again, Dean.
I'm going to let you go full screen while I fix it. So maybe
No,
give some of
please.
your thoughts.
All right. So we'll talk about the rocks, everybody. Why, Dr. Dean? So you can't really, if you can't see what's throwing the stones at you, you can't really say that it's a Sasquatch, or you can't say that it's a ghost, or you can't, whatever. If you don't see what's doing it, you can only assume. I mean, you could take pieces and parts if you got a knock beforehand, or you heard a growl or a huff or something, and then the rocks came in. Then you could, you could use use 1 + 1 and, figure that it could be a Sasquatch, or it could be, or a ghost if you're out looking for ghosts or any of that. But without seeing what's doing it now, you really cannot say what is doing it. You can only assume. So I think that's an important thing to take into your investigations, because you gotta take it all in. And the EVPs are happening. They're imitating us now. And the girls on my team heard pig grunts. So, Sasquatch are famous for doing pig grunts. So I got all excited when they heard it. We heard some pig grunts, right? So I said, well, mark it on the recorder, because I always have a recorder going on my backpack. And I got home, I put it in the computer. I'm all excited. And I'm like, oh my God, we got pig grunts. And it's not pig grunts. It's two guys saying hello to each other. The guy goes, hello. And then the other guy goes, hello. And the girls heard pig grunts, but the recorders picked up two guys saying hello to each other.
Weird.
So you have to look at everything. You have to look at everything. You have to, you can't, you got to look at it all. You can't just say, I don't know what I'm trying to say.
No, I know what you're saying. I think that way of approaching any of these things is super sensible, because I think, and just, when I say sensible, I mean, it just makes damn common sense, right? Like, for too long, there were people in all these different fields. So if Bigfoot would be an example, if the BFRO was investigating, or any other Bigfoot group that believed they were physical relic hominids, or undiscovered North American ape, or whatever, they wouldn't pay a whole lot of heed to stories where somebody saw a Bigfoot transform into an orb of light, or when there were orbs of light floating around, or any of this more metaphysical aspects, which we know people report all the time. And at the same time, early ufology actually in many ways is an embarrassment. I mean, the person I'm doing my documentary about, Ray Palmer and Richard Shaver, Palmer was switched on from the beginning, as was Shaver. They understood that this stuff was very different to what a lot of the nuts and bolts ufologists were saying. Palmer always thought it was much weirder and stranger than any of that. But ufology for the longest time, respectable ufology like NICAP and Donald Kehoe and people like that, they wouldn't even look, up until the mid 60s, respectable ufologists wouldn't even look at a contact report. Like, they believe they were extraterrestrial. They believe UFOs were coming from wherever and landing and taking off. But if anybody came forward and said, yeah, I met one of the pilots, they came out and told me this, respectable ufologists would just go, well, that just sounds crazy. I don't believe it. So I think you do have to look at all of these things, no matter how strange it sounds. I often think the stranger it is, probably the more legitimate the witness is being, because he's not just feeding me back the tropes that they've experienced from a science fiction movie or from a Bigfoot comic or whatever, right? They're actually saying this super weird thing, and then you've got to think, where's this coming from?
Right. Like the ETs, they say they do mind speak, right? They do telepathy. Not the Sasquatch again reports of telepathy. They mind speak with the Sasquatch. Um, Again, it's just all together. It's just there's something going on. I think that, and I tell Doug, he gets mad at me. I said I think Sasquatch is a space monkey. That's what I tell him, and he gets mad about it. I'm like, but you can't count that out, you know what I mean? I'm not saying they're flying around in flying saucers, but if aliens can use that doorway, why can't anything else use the doorway? Because obviously they're much smarter than we give them any credit to being. And there could be different levels, like remember the Land of the Lost and the Slee Stack, and they had the Slee Stack that would walk around, and then they had the guy with the crystals, he could mind speak to everybody, and he had the glowing eyes, and that could be true with anything, anybody, aliens, Sasquatch, human beings, even that, there are people that are, there's worker bees and there's workers and there's bosses, and you know what I mean? There's all different kinds of levels of everything. And I think fairy tales are real. I think they just didn't know how to write about them. You know
Me
what I mean?
too.
That's how they did things. The troll under the bridge, or it could have been a Sasquatch for all. You know what I mean? And Sasquatch goes back hundreds and hundreds of years of documentation. Leif Erikson battled the whole squad of them on the shores of North America or wherever he was. And
Right.
so,
And Bigfoot coming out of a UFO, isn't that crazy? Because I don't think it's necessarily, again, some physical thing from another planet. But if these things are as connected as I suspect they are, then for the different aspects of that phenomena to manifest at the same time, it seems inevitable. And certainly Stan Gordon, for example, chronicled cases of Bigfoot coming out of UFOs and going into UFOs. There are other stories like that. There was a very rich stories. For some reason, I don't know what it is, but in the late 60s through the 70s, there are a lot of hyper weird, high strangeness stories about Bigfoot and UFOs. And I'm not sure, I don't know if there's as many happening and they're just not as reported as much, but much of the literature of the day, and whether that was John Keel or Jacques Vallée, or whether it was even Lauren Coleman and Jerome Clark. Lauren Coleman now is considered one of the great cryptozoologists, and Jerome Clark's considered one of the great ufologists. Both of those people are fairly flesh and blood in Lauren Coleman's case, and in Jerome Clark's nuts and bolts ufologist. But they wrote books essentially emulating John Keel back in the day. Great books as well, Creatures of the Outer Edge, and what's the other one? The Uninvited, I think it's called. But both of these books are one's very UFO driven and one's very cryptid driven, but they're both saying essentially the same thing, that these things, UFOs, cryptids, ghosts, they all manifest from the same place. They're all connected. And for some reason, that fell out of fashion for a long time. I suspect it's coming back into fashion, which I'm glad about, because I think we're going to get closer to not ever understanding what that is, but again, closer to understanding what the importance of it means for us when we don't sectionalize all this off. So you've got ufologists just chasing UFOs, and cryptozoologists chasing Bigfoot, and whatever else, and specter hunters just chasing ghosts. I think when we're aware culturally, as a bigger collective, that this somehow says something about us, I think then it becomes more worthwhile as a genuine, significant, movement through our history and through our culture, our interconnectedness with the other. It mightn't matter how the other shows it. It might be the interconnectedness that matters.
Right. Don't give up on your beliefs. Don't just because you think that they're a flesh and blood animal. Okay, you can think that, and I have nothing against that. But leave the space open. Leave your mind open. Leave possibility open, because if you are totally shut out against the rest of it, you are a horse with blinders on, and you're not seeing to the right. You're not seeing to the left, and you're not looking anywhere else but that way. And it could be presented to you right in front of your eyes, and you're not paying attention. stick to your guns, keep an open mind. That's all you got to do, and start getting along. And people need to start talking, and like the 40 hertz thing, the hum and everything. I would never in a million years been able to talk to Doug Hychek or David Ellis or anybody about it. And now that we become friends, and they're listening to me, and I have different beliefs than they have. You know what I mean? And I think of different ways, but we're still friends, and it
Right.
doesn't. I don't care. I don't care if you say you like to eat. I don't know, haggis. I ain't gonna eat haggis. I'm telling you right now, I'm not gonna eat haggis. But I can still sit down at the same table as you eat your haggis and be your friend and talk about it. And I think that's what people really need to start learning how to do.
I
Is
agree too.
throw away all that BS.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't agree with Doug on a lot of things, but I certainly get on with him well. I find him fascinating to talk to, and he's certainly open to people talking about other things, as I think you and I are as well. I think that's very important. Now, did you have some photos or any materials you wanted to share with us and talk about a little bit as we start to wind down? We're getting towards the endish of the show, but if there's something you particularly want to show, we'd have time to put it
Well,
in.
no, if you want to see anything, I would like to show my one. I have one picture of that when we got our. I'll tell you, when we're at Larry's, and I told you we're doing the pattern hikes, and it took like months before we had any activity. And we got our first knock, and I never heard a knock in the woods. And we were walking down this path, and we got a knock, and we turned over, and we put our cameras right where the knock came from, and we picked up this one picture, and I just want to share it with you guys here. I am not claiming this is a picture of a Sasquatch, but I am going to show it to you guys. We'll bring them in. Now, for the longest time, I thought, here, share screen. Where are we? Share screen. Let's see, which one is it? Is it this one? Yep, that's the one. All right, so if you turn me on there and that one screen. So this is, you can see his head, you can see his fur. See, got the conical head. For all this time, I thought he had rings around his eyes. I call them bandit because that's what I thought it was. So when I did the little, it's not. They're leaves. But look at what's behind the leaves. You see those dark black eyes and his cradle of his nose and the gray skin. Now, I think that's a picture of whatever knocked in the forest. I'm not claiming that's a Sasquatch, but look at those dark black eyes and the cradle of his nose. And then he's reaching. See his hand? He's reaching for that branch in front of him.
Huh.
And that happened when we did the knock. So, yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting.
Do you think by knocking them, and Doug's joked with me, but I think he's somewhat serious when he said, like, you just go out and do a few knocks and you'll get them on your property. Like, do you think it draws something in when you do this?
Well, I didn't knock. They knocked. We were just walking down the path.
Oh, okay.
And we were looking for a place to trade with them for the longest time. And when they knocked, we went down into the forest after it, and there was a big rock sitting there in the middle of the forest. And that's where we stayed for 6 years.
Wow.
And that's where they came in, and we traded, stones, and we found out that they loved red delicious apples and peanut butter. They wouldn't eat hot dogs. They wouldn't take Granny Smith apples. They would rot in the branches. There was never ever any other animals prints found in there, because if they came in, and here, I'll show you a picture of one of the nests. Where is it? How do I get it there? So this is a nest that was at Larry's. You can see how it's all in the middle. It's all broken branches, big, 6 foot by 9 foot across. That's one of the nests up there.
Was this in the middle of the forest somewhere, or where?
It was in the middle of the habituation area. You can see all the branches, all the broken branches, and there was like it looked like a big bird's nest, and something was laying down in the middle of it, and we found 2 of those.
Did you look for fur or hair and stuff there as well? I'm guessing you would have.
Um, we weren't really. I didn't really wasn't a DNA guy because I didn't have anywhere to send it. We found prints. I found a couple. Here I'll share a real print real quick. Here's one of the prints. Come on. So this is a 13-inch print.
Wow, yeah, I can see it there.
There's the toes right here. And this was in the middle of like a stream. It would get really wet. And here's the casting of it. We tried our best to cast it, but it was so wet. We couldn't get it to cast.
Oh, I bet.
But you can see the big toe.
Yeah.
And you can see the break. So that's that. Let's see. We found a handprint. Check the handprint out real quick. Just let me know when you want to.
No, keep showing it to us.
To the end. So
wow, that does look like a handprint in there.
So there's the thumb. There's the fingers. They were dug into the ground. 1, 2, the fourth one's right there, and the fifth one's right there.
What size was that about? Like,
oh, that was like 4 times the size of my hand. And it was like in a bank like this. Like he was peeking up, looking at something, and then coming back down and like ready to spring. That was one of my early finds. And this is kind of the stuff that they would do. This was at a tree on the property. They would move stuff, but here, this was before we would show up one day and this is what it would look like. And then we would come back and then the log would be here underneath it.
huh.
They would move it to left side. One time it was balanced on this tree log, on this down tree. Let's see what I got. And this is my favorite structure that I've ever found up there. Why did that go up there? Oh. And just stuff like that all over the place. So it was a very interesting. Here's another print that we found up there. This was the 15-inch print. This was the big guy's print. Come on. You can see him. That's a big old print right there. We fluffed it up in the trading area with we would dig up the dirt and then we would fluff it with a rake.
Oh, gotcha.
And then he stepped right in it, and we didn't make it up there.
I just have a question from you from my Willie S57, and that's Joe Fox, I believe, and he asks you, Chris, do you practice gifting with them? I believe you do. Could you tell him a little bit about your process?
Yep. So I don't got any more pictures, Dean, if you want to just take them down.
Sure.
So we gifted at this area for 6 years, and we had lots of great stuff happen, and we played games, but we always challenged. We always made them had to use their hands because we believe that was the key to proving that it was the Sasquatch there. We always used hands. Like we would put peanut butter jar. They love peanut butter. The first 2 jars of peanut butter were twisted like in half and just ripped. And I held it up. This is no lie. You can ask Larry, the guy that I used to go, and I showed him how to turn the top of the peanut butter jar. After that day, we never found another peanut butter jar. Hundreds and hundreds of jars of peanut butter over 6 years. Never found another one. Just gone. We couldn't find where they brought them. We couldn't find any remnants of them. But we would put stones on top of them, and the peanut butter jar would be gone, and the stone would be right underneath where the peanut butter jar was. Now, what kind of forest animal could do that? And none of them. A bear couldn't do that. And there was a stuffed monkey that we used, and we would tie him in a tree, and they'd have to take him. So we tied in a tree. So the only way they would get it out was either untie their arms and throw it on the ground or lift it up over the branch. But the only problem about lifting it up over the branch, it would have to be lifted over 15 feet.
Jeez.
And we would find the monkey on the ground 15 feet with its arms still tied. So it was bringing it up over the branch. He took the monkey and they brought it back a year later, the same week.
Goodness gracious.
And it looked New England, stuffed animal. What would you imagine a stuffed monkey would look like after a year
Yeah,
gone?
pretty crappy.
This thing was mint condition. It was taken care of. It only had one little tear in it, but it was in beautiful. I still have it. Beautiful, beautiful shape. It was well taken care of, and it came back a year later, the same exact week. This is all on my. You can see this on my channel too, on Real American Monster channel, and I have most of this, and it's called Under Larry's. And you can see the knock and what I just talked about, and the peanut butter. Well, why I was showing the buddy, I brought one of my friends up there the day we found the jar of peanut butter with the rock. We're having stones thrown at us at the same time, so you can hear the stones coming in the forest. It was pretty cool. And then they sold the property, and I cried.
Oh gosh, I bet. I have a link to both your own YouTube channel and to Untold Radio Network, where your show, Real American Monsters, plays within the show notes. When you would leave something, like when you would gift or trade or whatever the preferred terminology is, how long would you leave until you went back and checked that site?
Well, when we first started, we were up there like 3-4 times a week. Sometimes we couldn't get up there. Like I got sick one time after I'll tell the story now, and I got sick, and I couldn't make it up there for a month. So I had my gallbladder went on me, and I woke up one morning, and Maria, my wife, saying, "What is down by the back door?" And I looking over the edge, and I'm like, "Well, I have no idea what's by the back door." And I went down, and I opened up the back door, and there is a freshly ripped off the dog coyote leg at my back door, just freshly torn off the dog. It's disgusting. Blood, warm still, left at my door. That was after a month I didn't make it up to the gifting area. So they came to my house. They came to me. That's what I believe, and left that. I threw that in the woods because Maria didn't want it next to the house. And I went to get the guys at work to show them, because Larry was working with me at the time, and I brought him down here to show him the leg, and I got back to the woods, and the leg was gone.
Goodness.
Just gone. 10 minutes. There's nothing here in Connecticut woods back then that was going to take that leg.
That's crazy.
So we never gave them enough food to be dependent. We figured out, we started giving them meat, but we couldn't make it up there. It was like the fall, and we're busy at work, and it wouldn't be 3 times a week. It would be like once every week, once on the weekend. Well, they weren't getting the meat. They were going down and slapping Larry's house, and Larry's wife wasn't having it. She's like, "Well, what are you guys doing different? Because now they're coming to the house. I'm here by myself. Larry's at work, and they're slapping the house." And I'm like, "Oh my God, Larry's got to be the meat." So we stopped giving them the meat, and that house slapping stopped. They would never eat hot dogs. They would just sit in the package, and they would never touch them. They would never touch a hot dog.
Huh.
Granny Smith apples, we would pierce the apples in the trees, so they would have to pluck them out, whatever, and if it was a squirrel or a deer or something, you would see the teeth mark, because they would come and chew them. We would never see any of that, and the Granny Smith apples would just rot in the branches and fall to the ground. There was no other animals that would come into there. Never. They loved dinosaur toys. We used to leave this, the 1970s plastic dinosaur toys.
Yeah.
They'd take those, and they would move them around, and they would play with them, and they would
Wow.
We had so much cool stuff happen up there. We had stuff go on with marbles and a crystal rock they would take, and they would bring back, and then they would take it, and then they would bring back, and the monkey, obviously, it was quite the wild ride, but it was 6 years, and yeah.
And you can't get onto the property now that it's been sold, I'm guessing?
No, we got those vocals that you heard. We went to film there because we're filming that documentary called The Winchester Wild Man, and we needed night footage. I'm like, well, we can go to Larry's, but we can only sit on the border. We can't go in any farther, and because it's private property now, and so we sat there that night, and that's what we got, those vocals. So they're still there. Obviously went to those vocals will be released in the end of February. Everybody at my show, David Ellis and Adam Colt will be on the show, and we're going to release those so everybody can hear them.
Fantastic.
There's 3 individuals on those tapes. So
it's been so great. We could keep going and going and going. What it tells me is I need to get you back on to talk more about this stuff.
Yeah. This was a great conversation I had. It's not, I like this kind of, instead of going to all the stories and everything, actually, talking about what's really going on out there and the comparisons and all that. I think that's important. I think that needs to be done a lot more.
I think it's important too. And the wonderful thing about chatting with you, Chris, is that you could also tell fascinating in-field stories, but you're happy to hypothesize and, think about, what might be behind some of this. And again, none of us know. This is all, just us BSing, so to speak. But maybe somewhere in there we can get a little bit closer to a better understanding again about ourselves, if not about what these things themselves are. Where do people, I've got some links in the show notes for those who want to just go there. They can just click right through probably, or copy and paste it and put it in their browser. But for those of people who are just listening, where should people go to check out all your work and your shows and everything else?
So everything's Real American Monsters. I have a Facebook group that's private. So just say you saw on Dr. Dean's show, and we'll let you in. And any friend of his is a friend of ours. And YouTube channels, Real American Monsters, and the podcast on the Untold Radio Network is Real American Monsters. So you can find us all there. My website has just been shut down. We are revamping all that to go with the filming end of everything. And
we didn't even talk about that. We'll talk about your films maybe next time we have you on.
Yeah. No, I'd love to come back, and I got to have you come on our show too.
Can't wait.
Yep.
Can't wait.
So I'm excited for that.
Well, man, I'm excited too. Thank you so much for joining with me tonight, Chris. It was such a great conversation. I really loved it. So did our chat.
Yeah, it was awesome. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me. Thanks for the chat, everybody. Oh, Carl Supp's there too. Everybody came to see tonight. So yeah, thank you.
There was a lot of them. It was great to see everybody there. And no, thank you. And hopefully I get to talk to you again sometime, Chris. But until I do, and until I talk to everybody else out there, which will be same weird time at 9 p.m. Central, same weird network, the Untold Radio Network, next Thursday night, please keep it weird.